pursuing whatever secretes when you are fearful. Your pineal gland secretes something when you are scared. It secretes something. And there were these, I think it might have been Alex Jones, who, oh gosh, I hope another quarter in the Alex Jones jar isn't going to have to go in, but he started speaking about that. And there were a lot of people, other people that were considered crazy for speaking about that.
Hey, besties, welcome back to my channel. There's something so wild to me that a YouTuber slash podcaster can be sued by a sitting president in a nation in Europe for defamation and false light and like 20 million counts for a series that was done on a podcast and YouTube channel. But that's exactly what's happening to Candace Owens. And Brigitte Macron is very dedicated to pursuing justice for what she calls conspiracy theories regarding her gender and her marriage to Emmanuel Macron. What's interesting is that amid this lawsuit that was filed against Candace, she initially stated that she was going to take the case all the way to trial, and then she filed a motion to dismiss. Candace on her podcast has stated that she was doing an investigation and she had spoken to all these different people and she got a lot of information from a journalist, uh, Xavier Possard, who is a French journalist, and she referenced a book that he had written. He is not actually being sued for defamation, which is interesting. But today in Paris, there were 10 people that are being charged for criminal acts related to Brigitte Macron. And when I saw this, I thought it is so wild that this France has such different laws as it relates to making false statements or sharing your opinion or laws about cyber behavior. One of the reasons why our forefathers in the United States came here was because of the suppression of speech and the lack of freedom of religion that was occurring in parts of Europe. The people that came here were seeking an alternative. They wanted a place where they could speak without fear of like criminal prosecution or lawsuits. They wanted to practice their own religion. They wanted the freedom. They didn't want to live in a state that mandated a state religion. And the American experiment is founded on the freedom of speaking your opinions so long as they are not defamatory. Defamatory and threats are two kinds of speech that are not protected under the First Amendment. The challenge for public figures like Mr. Macron and his wife are that they have to prove malice. I was interested today to see that in France, statements that are not even necessarily related as fact or even relayed as fact can be used to prosecute, and you could go to prison for up to 2 years. Now, for any of you wondering, and before you say you need to educate yourself on this topic, Katie, I did watch Miss Owens' series. I even watched her interview with the man that wrote the book that she used as a source. There were some points in her theory and her presentation that I thought, sure, that makes sense. There's a lot that could be said about the source of the relationship and the timing of a 39-year-old woman and a 15-year-old boy becoming in an intimate relationship. The fact that Brigitte was a teacher, Emmanuel a pupil at the school, is a whole nother question. And under the framing of the United States, that relationship would be considered illegal. If Emmanuel's parents cared about their son in the United States, Brigitte could have been tried and convicted of statutory R, abusing her power as a teacher. I mean, we've seen this happen before, right? Mary Kay Letourneau and Billy Falau. And then she went on to later marry Billy and they had 2 children. the concept of consent in the United States is different than it is in France. And for whatever reason, France, their consent laws when it comes to children is super low. And up until very recently, it was like 14 years old. Now, if you held a position of power like Brigitte did, it's not as black and white. But in France, the trial that she has that's going on related to claims, it has 10 defendants aged 41 to 60, and they stand accused of cyber harassment because they've targeted claims against her that she's a transgender woman who was born a man, and referring to her 24-year age gap with French President Emmanuel as a pedophile. So she's actually getting people charged in France because they made statements about the 24-year age gap between the two of them. And the defense from the Macrons and the purpose for the state here in France, or the area in France where this is being done, is that she was 39 and he was 15. So he wasn't a prepubescent child. So I guess apparently it is semantics, what they view as a pedophile versus non pedophile. So at the trial today, according to the Al Jazeera website, the chief judge said the defendants, whose post quickly gained traction online, racking up tens of thousands of views, had caused a deterioration in the First Lady's physical and mental health. There were 7 defendants in court, and if these people are convicted, they could go to prison for 2 years. The specific kind of cyberbullying that she's being charged is due to the fact that it's based upon gender and the fact that she's a woman, and then the accusation that she is not a woman, but a transgender woman. We don't have these types of laws in the United States where you can make a statement that's not true and then go to prison, possibly for up to 2 years. We have legal remedies that you can be sued, but you have to prove that the person is making the statements with a reckless disregard of the truth, or that the statements were not an opinion or a statement and were actually a statement of fact. Now, there are people that have been prosecuted, or I guess sued for defamation, that are public figures that are known to promote conspiracy theories, one being Alex Jones, who lost a lawsuit where he was found liable for his conspiracy theory about the Sandy Hook school shooting. And he has an outstanding judgment of over $1 billion that he owes to the parents of the victims who sued him. It is interesting because more and more lately, Candace going down conspiracy theory rabbit holes has made a lot of people say that she's starting to sound more like Alex Jones. And so when I heard her actually reference a conspiracy theory by Alex Jones, I thought, oh, Candace, help yourself. Don't go down the Alex Jones rabbit hole. But not everything that Candace says, she says as a fact. Not everything that Candace does is false, right? There's times that she gets reporting accurate. There's other times she shares her opinion. And in Candace's lawsuit, when she filed a motion to dismiss, one of the primary arguments they made in the introduction was this: the Macrons are upset that defendant Candace Owens produced an opinion-based series discussing the Macrons' relationship, their families' histories, and their rise to fame, power, and influence. This court, however, along with other state and federal courts in the United States, including the Supreme Court, has protected journalists' First Amendment rights to produce such content since our nation's founding. So, on the one hand, she has reported this and has said that this is what her belief is, this is what her opinion is. And I watched her series, and she was at times very careful that she believed that this was, what she believed at the time. She also said if she was proven wrong, she would, you know, change her opinion, but she really truly, it seems, believes that this is a fact. But in court, she told the court that it was an opinion series. Now, most people that watch Candace know that she's presenting commentary and it's entertainment. And so she also might get out of this because of that loophole, right? That she's going to double down, that she's going to present this as her having an opinion. Now, the Macrons amended their lawsuit last month, and it's like 200 some pages. It reminds me of the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuits, where the lawsuits are very much about as much a PR document as they are a lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, they are saying that, since they filed the lawsuit, she has doubled down. They have added new causes of action, and they've even accused her of doing something very similar in regards to the death of Charlie Kirk. In their amended complaint, they wrote, but Owens has taken it even further. Since the Macrons filed this action on July 23rd, 2025, Owens has unequivocally doubled down. She has continued to use her podcast to expand her lies about the Macrons, sell merchandise, making fun of the Macrons, and collect donations based on her reporting on the Macrons. And the reporting is in quotations. Owens, with the full knowledge of this lawsuit, launched a new season of Becoming Brigitte in which she makes absurd claims that Mrs. Macron, as Jean Michel, participated in the Stanford prison experiment, which Owens claims is somehow linked to her later transition. Owens has also gone so far as to suggest that the Macrons are involved in alleged conspiracy to distract Owens from investigating Charlie Kirk's assassination. And then later on paragraph, they write, even the filing of this action did not slow down defendants. Owens has mentioned the Macrons in every podcast episode she has made between July 23rd through September 9th, and in various episodes since then. For instance, in episode 238 that aired on September 18th, Owens suggested that the Macrons were part of a conspiracy to try to distract Owens from looking into Charlie Kirk's murder and assassination, simply because the Macrons' counsel participated in a BBC podcast about the case 8 days after Kirk's death. It's interesting to watch how cases can sometimes, overlay one another. Now, France's laws when it comes to defamation are very different than the laws in the United States. And like I said, it's not super easy to win, but it's not impossible. And what I just think is odd in all of this is that people that are public figures and that are presidents and that are heads of state, there are so many people that make statements about them that are, of course, not true. I mean, think of all of the late night hosts that mock the presidents of the United States, or all of the, ridiculous conspiracy theories that are started about various celebrities or heads of state. And those never result in lawsuits. This specific issue seems to bother them so much that they're not only suing people in France, but now police are prosecuting or investigating, and now there's a trial for 10 people in France. And Candace filed a motion to dismiss, which was basically made moot when the Macrons amended their complaint. One of her rationalizations for it was that it was protected under the First Amendment. The other one was that she isn't a Delaware citizen, so the state of Delaware has no jurisdiction over her, that even though her business was formed in the state of Delaware, that they don't have jurisdiction over her. The jurisdiction argument for the company is weak, and Candace has been part of litigation in Delaware before, so I don't know that that's going to work. They are requesting that it either be dismissed under the First Amendment or dismissed under lack of jurisdiction, or if dismissed under lack of jurisdiction, move to the state of Tennessee where it could be done under Tennessee, and then they'd have access to everyone, including Candace and all the people that are involved in her companies. So I recognize that everyone has a right to sue anyone for anything. Anyone has a right to sue for whatever reason. What I just think is really weird about all of it is that if it is totally false and if it's just a conspiracy theory, I feel like the prosecutions and the lawsuits are just making it even a bigger story than it already was. And perhaps the Streisand effect is part of this in that, the conspiracy theories that Macron says are going around about her are now becoming more amplified because of the lawsuit and now because of the criminal actions. Now, I don't know the police in Paris, like they claim that the investigation was opened after she filed a lawsuit in 2024. And then they looked into these claims and then they made a decision to file charges against these people. Paris's laws around defamation and cyberbullying are not the same as the United States. So it's not, and it appears that the people that are being charged in France are French. There's no such criminal act that is happening here in the United States. And strangely, in the state in France, apparently there's a very short window that you can sue for defamation, like a few months, versus in the United States, the statute can range from 1 to 3 years, depending on which state you sue in. But it's just wild that someone who has so much prestige and so much, fame and power is going after for statements that were made on the internet, statements that were made by podcasters, statements that were made by independent journalists. I don't know how the case will, play out. The Alex Jones libel case with the Sandy Hook situation was far different than this case because in this case, Emmanuel and Brigitte are actually public figures. It's if Candace actually believes this is true, they'll have a hard time proving malice. And I mean, they could say that she recklessly disregarded the truth, but again, it's so hard to win these cases. And even though two women were found liable in France for defamation for these claims, the appeals court in France overturned their conviction. So naturally, Mr. Macron and Mrs. Macron are going to the Supreme Court to have it, overturned in their favor. It just seems like a lot of time and attention is being used by them to sue everyone into oblivion over what they say is a conspiracy theory. Now, whether they like it or not, there is a relevant component to this conversation that is factual. Brigitte was 39, Emmanuel Macron was 15. In the United States, that's a crime. So, from a person that reports in the United States, they're relying on their understanding of criminal law in the United States, where that kind of relationship would be all over the news. In France, people are literally being prosecuted and could go to prison for pointing out that age difference, which is wild. And I'm glad that I don't live in France right now because you would be hard pressed to have any sort of job and share an opinion. I don't know what will happen in the lawsuit. I don't think it's going to be easy for her. I think the Macrons have a lot of money, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of influence. They could easily bankrupt her if they were to win. And maybe part of this is to bankrupt her. Maybe part of this is to destroy her. But it just feels like you're picking on someone that's a lot smaller than you when you go after independent broadcasters and commentators when you are the head of a state. She's certainly in trouble and she's going to have a long legal battle. I don't think it's going to get dismissed. If it does get dismissed in Delaware, it will end up in court in Tennessee. And regardless of all of that, it just begs the question why they're fighting so hard. I recognize that it's not nice to have people spread lies about you. I recognize that there's people going after this woman and they're saying she's a man. I recognize people are accusing her of being a sex offender. I recognize all of those things. But I would just think like when you're a head of a state, you have a lot of other things that you need to worry about. That what is being said about you on the internet seems so inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Candace is just lucky that she's not a French resident because if she were in France, I have no doubt they would try to probably criminally charge her. But the lengths that the police and everyone's going, it's wild. It just goes to show you how different the legal systems are and how different people are in Europe when it comes to statements that are not true or are of opinion. Now, Candace says this is her opinion and she has a right to share her opinion. And she's not doing this with malice. And the Macrons say that she is. I don't know what your thoughts are, but tell me what they are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, bestie.